And my business partner and my friend since the age of 14, Chris Rose. Chris's background in information security began a leadership rotational program at Fortune 200 companies in 2006. He left to serve 6 years in the United States Marine Corps, where he was the Country Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, for the Republic of Georgia, a role in which he built and maintained the USMC network architecture in the country. Chris successfully protected what he built from cyber attack in a highly vulnerable cyber threat environment. Upon returning to the United States, Chris left the Marine Corps to attain a master's in computer science and master's of business administration from UCLA. Go Bruins.
Clicker here. Testing. Okay. I'm going to step out like Mike's own. So as Aaron said, we're just a bunch of former military guys and gals out there trying to solve this problem for small businesses. And today we've heard a lot about, you're probably still processing a lot of information has come your way, but at some point when you stop processing information, or if you have already, you're going to ask yourself, well, what's next? What do I do? Special Agent Sohn gave us some tips, but I'm here to present to you kind of a roadmap, a framework that you can follow with actual tangible, actionable steps to really improve your business security. First, I'd like everybody to pull out their cell phone. So pull out your cell phone and go to your Wi-Fi where you would turn your Wi-Fi on. Raise your hand in the iPhone. I think it's in the settings. So raise your hand if your Wi-Fi is on right now. Okay. How many of you does it say not connected? So you're not connected to a network. Keep your hand up. All right. For all of you guys, we just hacked you. Not really. Our attorneys wouldn't let us do it. But this is a theme of kind of the talk I'm going to give today is security and convenience. You've kind of heard this said in multiple ways today. Security and convenience often don't go together. When you make something more secure, that convenience drops. When you make something more convenient, that security drops. The Wi-Fi protocol is a perfect example of this. And while we couldn't hack you because of our attorneys, we could have, and I'll tell you how. We would set up a rogue access point, and the Wi-Fi protocol, which was designed to be convenient, what it does is it saves all those Wi-Fi networks that you go on, right? Your home, your work, that Hilton hotel you stayed on in Omaha, Nebraska. It saves those, and when you're walking around and your Wi-Fi's on and you're not connected to anything, it's constantly calling out and saying, hey, home, are you there? Hey, work, are you there? Hey, Hilton Hotel in Nebraska, are you there? All of those saved networks. And all we have to do is just answer the call and say, yep, I'm here. I'm here. I'm whatever network you want me to be, and now you're passing all of your information through us, including your credentials and everything else. It's that easy. So the Wi-Fi is a great protocol, right? You understand why it was created that way, because it's very convenient. You don't want to have to manually log in every time you go into your office. But with that convenience comes a security trade-off. So a brief review, I'm tasked with kind of bringing this all together. This will be a brief review, and then I'll get into that framework for tangible, actionable steps that you can actually take to secure your business. We've heard a lot about cyber breaches. This is a big problem. It's increasing, it's growing. But I think it's important to look at why. Why is this problem growing, and why is it not going away? And there's a few reasons for that. First, there's more data than ever before. The best example of this is electronic health records. Came into law January 2016. All health records had to be digital. There are companies out there that will go into a dentist's office, a doctor's office on a weekend, and they will scan every physical record, and they will turn it into digital format. We now just have a ton more data that can be breached and that a business is at risk. It's also in more places than ever before. It's on our cell phones, it's on thumb drives, it's in our Dropbox, it's on external hard drives, computers, everywhere you look, your Apple iTunes backup, your email, all of these systems are storing data. One of the first things we do when we go in a company, and this might sound easy, is try and figure out where all the data is. Because if you don't know where it is, how can you really secure it and protect it? Second, and this was alluded to earlier, there's more ways in than ever before. The smart refrigerators, that baby monitor that connects, your Xbox, your smart TV, all of these are ways into the network, and once you get in, you can get to the crown jewels, as Randy just called it. Talked about convenience and security. Still hasn't caught up. And the other thing, this focus on convenience, there's a talent gap. and this is starting to be fixed, but we can't just overnight, if the consumer is now starting to care about security and saying, I care about security, I want security, you can't just overnight fix the problem. Those job statistics were thrown out, and the reality is the only people that cared about this for the longest time were the military and the federal government. And so the Amazons of the world, the Googles of the world, that pay this top technical talent, they paid the software engineers to build convenient software. We've heard about the difference between an IT and a cybersecurity skill set. So that's where the jobs were, that's where the best technical talent went, and you can't just overnight flick the switch and solve this problem. In 5 years, I think this will be a different story. You're seeing schools start to put in cybersecurity programs. You're seeing the big companies start to pay money for the security skill set. And finally, we all live in a bad neighborhood. So in the physical world, when you're deciding where to set up your office or where to live or where to rent, whether you know it or not, you're using that criteria of security, right? Crime. What is this neighborhood? Think about the worst neighborhood you've ever been in. That is the virtual neighborhood that we all live in. Everybody's connected. You don't have to physically put yourself at risk to go break into somebody's house. You can do it from a basement in Eastern Europe. I'm not going to, these statistics have already been mentioned today, but I want to just provide some commentary on them. So in 2014, Symantec did a study, and they said 62% of all data breaches were small and medium businesses. So that's of all data breaches that happened in 2014, 62% were small and medium businesses. That same study last year, and you saw this earlier, said 55% of all small businesses were breached. Think about the difference of this. Of all the data breaches, 62% were small and medium businesses. Now, 55% of businesses were breached, period, and most don't even know it. That's the difference of that study and the pace of change in 2 years. The best example of not knowing this, the Target breach was alluded to a little bit, but Fazio Mechanical Services is actually the way that breach started. Fazio is a small refrigeration services company, small business in Pennsylvania area, and one of their users clicked on a link, like we've heard about a million times today. Clicked on a link, it was known malware, should have been blocked, they had firewall, they had antivirus, it wasn't, it got through, stole a username and password, communicated it back to the hackers. At some point, they took inventory of what they had, and they said, this is really interesting. This is a username and password to a Target vendor portal. Now, from that point forward, Target had crap security, don't get me wrong, but the way they got in was actually through a small business. And Fazio never would have known that they were breached had the FBI and a big third-party partner showed up at their door. And that's with a lot of small businesses, with the exception of ransomware, which you can't ignore because it jumps up and smacks you in the face, they're finding out from third-party partners that are bigger or law enforcement, or they're not finding out at all. And the longer it goes, Randy alluded to this, the longer somebody's in your system and you're not catching this breach, the harder it is for the best digital forensics experts in the world, right, the FBI, whoever, to come back and gather the information necessary to be able to put together what happened. So that whole assumed compromise, where you have to assume, maybe it was just the neighbor kid who was learning how to hack, who was messing around and got into your computer and was stealing your music. But if you can't prove it because they've been in there for a year and all that information is purged to be able to put it back together, now you're assuming compromise of your entire customer list and you're notifying them. The final point from a statistical standpoint I want to make is just this risk is bigger than just one business. We had, Assembly and Kylie, a number of the state representatives here today speak on this, and I think it's important to think about small businesses. They represent 99% of all U.S. businesses and employ 60% of our workforce, greater than 50% of the GDP. This is an economy problem. If this all of a sudden starts, if 55% of them, if you believe Symantec, were breached in 2016 and most of them don't even know it, this is something, and the cost, we've already seen the cost that you have to pay. There's real cost to this, the biggest one being reputational. This is a bigger problem than just one business. Bob told us a lot about the laws, so I'm not going to belabor this, but here is an example. So here's the California State Attorney General website. I took this screenshot yesterday or 2 days ago. Actually, UCLA, been a great host. Sorry to call you out here, but you could see that their summer session had a breach on July 31st. So this is what happens. This is that greater than 500 records. You're posted on the California Attorney General website. You're there for the rest of time. You click into one of those links, you'll get something like Kevin J. Palmer and Company. This is public information, not to smear these guys. So these are a CPA firm in Visalia, and this is all public information. This is part of the notification that they sent out to all their customers. So they hired the forensics team, as we've heard that you have to do. You have to tell them exactly what may have been accessed. Again, assumed compromise, that's that second paragraph there. Of course, they're going to tell them, hey, this is what we're doing to make this be more secure going forward. They're offering the credit monitoring, which you have to do at their expense. And finally, this is the most common thing you'll see in a lot of these breach notices from small businesses is, in our 31 years of business, we've been doing this so long, and this has never been something that we've been confronted with. This is a new risk, it's a growing risk, and it's an out-of-business risk. One other commentary on the breaches. So we deal with the small. So 25 computer users in an office all the way down to even the self-employed. And I've had multiple conversations with business owners sitting across the table where you explain to them, okay, you have ransomware is the most common because ransomware, you can see it, so they pick up the phone and they call because they can't keep working. And with ransomware, actually ransomware is not necessarily a data breach. Some variants of ransomware are just that. They lock your files, they encrypt it, you can't get in, but it doesn't necessarily siphon off personally identifiable information that you would have to report and notify customers. Other variants are. To find out if you have which variant you have to pay for the digital forensics. Not a skill set that local law enforcement has as in the physical world when you would report a break-in. So you're paying a private party to do it. And when you walk them through all the costs, when you walk a small business owner at these smaller levels that don't have cyber liability insurance, what it's going to cost to do this, it's not even an option. And so it's kind of an ethical, moral dilemma where these are good people and they'll look at you and they'll just say, I don't have an option here. I can't afford that. So what are my options now? What do I do? And at that point we say, well, we can absolutely help you. We'll reset all your systems. We'll re-image them. We'll make sure you're secure going forward and monitor you. But you'll never have that peace of mind or that closure to know if, 2 years from now, is the FBI going to show up at your door because you're tied to some bigger breach and it gets traced back to you like Fazio Mechanical Services. We come in, so a lot of what we've heard today has been the breach response, right, the reaction. We try and come in sometimes, or we come in a lot on the front end for companies that maybe just want to know, hey, is my IT person that good? Or we've already talked about IT and cybersecurity are a different skill set. It's not even necessarily an IT person's fault, but they just need a backstop, somebody to come in and give a report card and say, hey, how are we doing? What can we do to improve? So we'll come in and do these pre-breach assessments. So this is not breach response. It's just how healthy is my network? And we see, and this is some of the stuff that we've seen at, again, small businesses. 2 of our last 5, I know for sure, have had remote connections from Eastern Europe into their networks. What that means is this is a protocol put out by Microsoft, used by help desk IT people to be able to remotely service the computers. And hackers taking advantage of it and have these remote connections. We can tell that it's somebody on a Russian layout keyboard. We can trace the IP and say that, hey, this is Ukraine. But outside of that, because we don't own everything, there's not a lot more that we can tell. Very concerning, though. There are very few reasons, unless you're doing business with Eastern Europe, that this would happen. Backups aren't working and aren't being checked. This is the most common. We see it in the pre-breach scenarios, but in the post-breach with ransomware, everybody thinks they have backup until they get hit with ransomware, and then they're paying Bitcoin because, oh, yeah, there was that one folder, or there was that one, we swapped out our share drive and we forgot to do it, or we just never checked it, and it worked the first 5 days we did it, and it backed up to the cloud, but after that, it stopped working, and we haven't audited it in 2 years. Misconfigured, unconfigured technical equipment. It's great to buy a firewall. It really is. It's great. It's a great part of the bigger comprehensive solution. But if you just take it out of the box and plug it in, you're doing yourself a disservice. We heard about the default usernames and passwords. There are scripts and bots scanning the internet right now, looking whenever a new firewall comes on, whether it's Dell, Fortinet, Palo Alto, Cisco, doesn't matter, and they're trying to enter those default username and passwords, and they're trying to get in there. Or if it's configured by, again, security and IT are different skill sets. If it's configured by somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, they might be opening you up to a vulnerability that it would have just been better had you never put the firewall on there to begin with. Servers with critical data open to the outside world. This is really a problem of small businesses and the software that they use. A lot of times it comes from small businesses that were in the industry. Chiropractor is a great example. We have a chiropractor as a client. We brought them on in May, and there's a great software that they use that's very good for their business. And it was created by a chiropractor who started it with like Excel macros, right? And they're like, oh, this is great. This makes what we do a lot easier. And then they said, hey, there might be a business idea here. Let's turn this into a software and sell it to other chiropractors. Well, they're not Google, they're not going to get that same technical software engineer talent. They're posting something online, trying to find web developers that don't know how to do secure coding. And so these small business softwares are ripe with vulnerabilities, and there's nobody checking it because it's a small business level and it's within the industry vertical. So this was an example of a chiropractic software that was just literally, it was like hosting a web server in their office, open to the outside world, and it was the same server that had all of their medical records on it. So if you got in, you basically logged into it as a website, you would have access to everything. Again, not necessarily people's faults, it's just this is a new thing that they're having to learn about. Guest networks and business networks on the same. So this is all over. But you walk in, you see the Wi-Fi password. Hey, great, thanks, you're a client. Thanks for coming to our small business. Go ahead and hop on the Wi-Fi. It's a right now, right? It's no longer a privilege. But that guest network is not separated from their business stuff. So we talked about these are doors and windows, like adding a door and window to your house that you now have to secure. This is the same thing. So now you're letting people come in with whatever devices they have that you have no idea of the security of them. You have no idea if they're already infected. And now you've just let them onto the same network where all your critical data is. The update issue I'll talk about a little bit later, but Mike Sohn talked a little bit about sophistication. If you are not updating your applications and your operating system, you're drastically decreasing the sophistication required of the hacker to be able to exploit you. There are so whenever a known vulnerability comes out and gets released, there are security researchers out there that all they do is they research vulnerabilities of software, bigger companies, and these bigger companies have what are called bug bounty programs. And so if these security researchers find them, they say, thank you, here's money, and that's how they make a living, and then they patch it and they release it out to everybody. If you're not patching these known vulnerabilities, there's also a known exploit out there. You've drastically decreased the sophistication required because I can go Google that exploit, figure out how to do it, watch a 15-minute YouTube video, and now I just need to figure out how to do a scan and find out who hasn't updated this latest patch of Microsoft, for example. End-of-life systems, so this is the even worse version of unpatched. If it's end-of-life and Microsoft or Google or Adobe has said, we're no longer supporting this, now when known vulnerabilities come out, they don't even patch them, so they're there for the rest of the time. Windows 2003 Server, Windows XP. Windows XP has been end-of-life since 2014. We see it in greater than 50% of the companies that we go into. So that's what we're seeing from a technical standpoint on the breaches. What about from a non-technical? People don't think they're a target. You might feel differently after you're walking out of here today, but let me just address this real quick. The I don't have anything to steal. Well, a lot of people have tackled this today, so I'll just add one more point to this. If I hack you, one of the things I'm going to do is I now own your box. We call it a box, right? I own that computer. When I go do my follow-on attacks, or I keep doing what I'm doing because I'm a cyber criminal, I'm not doing it for my own thing that can be traced back to me. I have control of your box, so I'm going to make it a web server. I'm going to put malware on it so that when I'm sending out these phishing emails to tens of thousands of people, they're clicking and they're going to your box. And that's that whole third-party partner or law enforcement thing. A lot of small businesses will find out they've been hacked because law enforcement shows up and they say, hey, you're hacking from here. And they're like, no, I'm not. Oh, well, then you've been hacked and now they're hosting malware on your systems. The other thing for small businesses is, you're right, you're not a target of interest. You are not Sony, you're not JP Morgan Chase. The cyber criminals are not out there directly targeting you, but you are what's called a target of opportunity. They're sending out tens of thousands of these phishing emails. They're scanning the web for these known vulnerabilities and if they're there. And then at some point they're taking inventory and saying, ooh, this is interesting, this is Kevin J. Palmer, this is an accounting firm. They might have some interesting data, and then they're going and they're exploiting it. Nobody was targeting Fazio Mechanical Services, small refrigeration services, who their biggest client was Target, and they went in and did some vendor work for them on their refrigeration systems. They were a target of opportunity, and then when the hackers took inventory, they said, oh, this is a target vendor portal, this is good information. Your normal go-to people, just be careful with this because it's a new field. We've talked about the difference between IT and security, but also in the attorney realm. I've had numerous conversations with attorneys that aren't Bob Braun, and this wasn't something where they had an opportunity to take a cybersecurity course while they were in law school. It's a new field, and it's growing, and it's constantly changing, and so a lot of people that are really good in other things don't know a lot about it yet. So just be careful who you're trusting with and talking to about it. Untrained users with no technology backstop. So it's one thing to have untrained users, and we've kind of talked about the difference between approaching this from a policy standpoint and a training standpoint and from a technology standpoint. I think you need both. You need that technology backstop. But if you have untrained users who don't know and who aren't inspecting emails and who are clicking on links, and then you don't have that technology backstop to maybe protect them, then you're in a really bad spot because you've missed on both. Major gaps between what the business owner thinks is happening and what's actually happening. Backup's an example of this, right? Oh yeah, we have backup. We pay for Carbonite. It's a great program. We installed it. I'm sure it runs. The one positive spin I'll put on this is it's very easy when we go into these businesses to see who's trying. And at this point, because this is such a big problem and it's so early on, really you just want to be trying. It's very easy to see who's kind of willfully negligent, that slide burying the head in the sand that Special Agent Stone had, and who's actually at least making an attempt. Okay, I think I'm about halfway through here. Well, I'm more than halfway through. Real quick, so this is just for fun, what to do next, because you're probably going to be tired and still process some of this information when you get out of here. So this is more of a personal tool that you can do. You're going to go to the site, haveibeenpwned.com. Don't worry about the special characters. It just starts with the H. Haveibeenpwned.com. You're going to enter your email or your username, and do all of them because it matters for all of them. This is a site. This is only the big breaches. It's not all of them. But it's going to tell you what breaches your credentials were involved in and what was stolen in the past few years. And there's actually more of them. This got cut off. So for me, it was Avast, which is actually an antivirus company, B2B USA businesses. LinkedIn, I know, was one that got cut off here. And then at that point, you're going to think about the password that you had. So in my example, LinkedIn. The LinkedIn breach, I believe, was in 2014. And think about, one, have you changed your password since that? And then how many times have you reused that password for other things? At which point, you're going to go and you are going to change your password. Please do that. And we've heard about two-factor authentication. If you want to be more sophisticated, kind of the varsity level, enable two-factor authentication. Because at that point, it doesn't really matter what your password is. You have to have your cell phone as well to be able to log in. But really, okay, from a business owner standpoint, so this is a framework we came up with because it's very easy to talk about the problem and to throw out stories and to really scare people, but it's really hard to attack this problem, right? This is a new thing, and a lot of people don't know what to do. And so what we attempted to do with this framework is actually provide a roadmap with tangible, actionable steps that you can do at the smallest levels to protect yourself. And the way to remember it is like a play on Adidas, all day I dream about soccer. This is all day I play soccer. And so the framework looks like this. The first two steps you got to do is accept and decide. And once you get through the accept, decide, if you don't buy that this is an issue, then don't even worry about the right side and the real. But accept, decide, and then inspect, plan, supervise. So the first two steps are accept, decide. Accept that you are a target of opportunity. Again, not a target of interest. Unless you really piss somebody off that has a skill set, somebody's probably not targeting your small business directly, with a few exceptions. But you are a target of opportunity, just like we're all targets. You can get caught up in that tens of thousands of emails that are sent out, or that link that was put on an ad network on the New York Times site that spread malware to everybody that went to New York Times and clicked on that ad link. You are a target of opportunity. Accept that this isn't going away. This is the whole slide where, okay, well, but why are these breaches increasing? This is not a fad. Accept that antivirus and firewall are no longer enough. This is a complex problem. It's getting more and more sophisticated. You need more help than just buying one piece of software or one hardware and putting it on your network. And finally, accept that it's cheaper to be proactive. We've heard a lot today about the costs of a data breach and when you have to react if you're unprepared. It's cheaper to be proactive about this. If you get through those 4 accept steps, you're then going to move to the decide phase. The first thing you need to decide as a business owner, not to delegate this. This is a you problem. This is Randy talked about risk management. This is something that that you need to be heavily involved in. It's definitely not something you delegate to IT. IT is part of the solution. They are not somebody that should be owning security and risk management. Decide to be proactive. We already kind of talked about this, and not willfully negligent. Decide to adopt a security lens into your decision-making process. I think Bob Braun gave a great example of this when he talked about companies. Data is everybody's excited about data. We want to collect all this data. We might do something with it. Let's collect contact data. If you're looking at collecting data through a security lens and you look at, hey, we've been on our forum, on our website, we've been collecting this PII and we've been doing it for years and we never do anything with it. Don't collect data that you don't need. That's an example of looking at something through a security lens in the same way that you look at problems through a financial lens and ROI. Have that security lens that you apply to it. And if you get through all of these steps, then you decide to enter what I call the wheel. The wheel is the I play soccer, so the inspect, plan, supervise. And I'm going to break this out. Forgive me, I'm pretty basic. This helps me remember it. But we're going to go freshman, JV, varsity, just like when we were in high school. So, and the goal is JV, I think, for small businesses. I think that's a reasonable goal within the next 6 months to try and get to JV. But what I'll talk mostly about the freshmen because that's the stuff that you can walk out of here today and start to do on your own. For the JV, you're going to need help. You need to bring in outside help, people that know what they're doing. So the cyber hygiene spot check. This is something that I'm going to go through each step. This is something we came up with. It's on our website. But it's a good way to just know, hey, am I negligent? Are we even trying on this? Is my IT person telling me, is what they're telling me really the truth? The next level is that vulnerability assessment that Randy and Melvin talked about. And this is an annual thing, and I would advise that you rotate vendors for this because there's a lot of snake oil out there, but two, even people that know what they're doing and are doing this well, they have different methodologies. They come from different backgrounds. They're good at different things. So when you get to this JV level of annual vulnerability assessments where you're getting these report cards that are telling you where you're vulnerable, where it matters for your business and what you can do about it, rotate the vendors so that you get some different perspectives and you weed out people that don't know what they're doing. And finally, the varsity level is that penetration test that was just referred to. My personal opinion, penetration test is a Fortune 500 thing at this point. One, there's the skill set required to do real penetration tests, and just quickly, the difference between a penetration test and a vulnerability assessment is the vulnerability assessment, here's all your vulnerabilities, your risks, and you take actions, you come up with a plan, right, to mitigate those risks. Some risks you accept, some risks you mitigate, some risks you transfer. A penetration test is trying to actually exploit those vulnerabilities. So an example of this might be the Wi-Fi. I mentioned that your Wi-Fi is on your business network, and you give it out to your customers. So that's a vulnerability. You might mitigate that risk by virtually separating your Wi-Fi from your business network stuff. So now there's a wall between it, so it's hard to get across. You've mitigated that. It's still a vulnerability because it's Wi-Fi, it's radio waves, it's out there for everybody, but it's less of a vulnerability because you mitigated it. That penetration test is going to try and exploit that vulnerability and tell you, can I actually get through that mitigation tactic that you put in there to the good stuff, the PII and the business stuff. So my personal opinion, small businesses, one, there's not a lot of people out there that really have the skill set to do a good pen test, and a pen test is going to tell you nothing if you haven't done a vulnerability assessment. Back to the freshman level. So the cyber hygiene spot check, the Ariento cyber hygiene spot check. You don't have to write all of this down, but this is the tangible, actionable steps you can take when you walk out of here. The first one's the sophistication check. So this is the updates, right? How sophisticated does a hacker have to be? There's a quote out there that basic cyber hygiene can prevent 80% of data breaches. And I think that's probably the JV level, but at the freshman level starting, it's giving you an idea. So you're going to go, and this is Windows-based, but you're going to go to your control panel, system and security, and you're going to look at Windows Update. And preferably, you're going to grab your IT person, you're going to do this on a server, because that's where it really matters, because that's where your critical data is. And if it looks like this is not good. This was not updated since 2011. And if that happens, then you're going to have a conversation and say, why aren't we? This is something you can turn on to automatically update. I'll tell you why it doesn't happen, and we see this a lot. It's because updates break things. And you, as a business owner, want things to work, right? And so you tell your IT person, hey, why did this just break? And they're like, oh, well, we just updated, and it was a security patch, and now it broke that small business software that we talked about that is built by developers, and it's a great software for running your business, but it just broke something because it interacted with the Microsoft operating system. So what do? They say, man, I need to make this work. I know how I can make this work. I'm going to turn off automatic updates, and it's never going to update. And then you get into a situation where it's 5 years later, and the computer hasn't been updated. And now you've drastically decreased that sophistication level required of a hacker. If it looks like this, that's a good thing. The second sophistication check. So that was the operating system. Now we're going to look at applications. You're going to go to a website called nynite.com. So nynite.com. You're going to pick all of the applications that are on your computer. You're going to check those boxes, and then you're going to click Get Your Nynite. That's going to download a program that you're then going to run. And when you run that program, it's going to look like this. You are looking for the skipped up to date. That's a good thing. All the ones that don't show skipped up to date, that means they weren't up to date, and Nynite's updating them for you. So this is going to help make at least that individual computer more secure. But again, you're going to go have a conversation with your IT person, and you're going to say, well, why aren't these applications updated? You're drastically decreasing the sophistication level required of the hacker. Now they limit the damage check is what we call this one. So you're going to go this is Chrome. You can do this with any application on your desktop. You're going to right-click it. You're going to click Run as Administrator. It's going to pop up something to ask you to put in credentials. You're going to put in your credentials, same way that you log into your computer. If you get to the point of yes, no, and you press yes, and it opens the program and runs it, that is not a good thing. If you are operating in the day-to-day as an administrator on your computer, that means that if you get hacked, you've now given that hacker the ability to do anything they want. They have full ownership of that computer. What you want to operate as is a user. It's called a user account. So you should have two separate accounts. One is a user that's going to protect you, and then the administrator account for when you need to do things that require elevated privileges, like install a program that might have malware in it. The basics. This one's a little bit hard to explain, but we heard a lot about stolen computers and laptops. If you go to that California Attorney General website, it's one of the most common data breaches. Not something you would typically think as a data breach, it's physical theft. But the reason those are data breaches is because they're unencrypted. And let me be clear, encrypted does not mean password protected. You have to turn on encryption. So on the Windows side, you can open up your little window and just search for BitLocker. Just type in BitLocker. And you're going to get to a screen that looks like this, and if it's turned on, great. That means everything's encrypted. And that means if your laptop gets stolen, as long as you don't have that sticky that Randy talked about on there, then it's not a data breach. You're not going to have to notify anybody. For Mac, it's called File Vault, and so that's what it looks like on the right. The known malware check. This is put out by Fortinet, but you're going to go to this website, metal.fortigard.com. And what this test does is it takes the European Union actually created a test piece of malware that doesn't really harm your computer and for this purpose. And so what this test does is it runs 18 different tests, and it takes that piece of malware. It actually takes it takes the same file name, but it's not malware. It zips it, it kind of hides it, and it tries in 18 different ways to get onto your computer. But it's a good file at first. Then it takes the bad one, and it does the same thing, and it sees if it will get through. The training and awareness check. I'll give you a second to read this. Send this to any one of your employees, and if they respond, especially via email, unencrypted email, it's not a good thing. If they walk you the information or write it, that's actually not so bad. But this will tell you, hey, is there any training out there? Do my employees have any idea? The segregation check. Okay, you're going to go back to your office. You're going to get on your work computer that you work on every day. You're going to open Google, and you're going to type in, what's my IP? Don't even worry about the apostrophe. What's my IP? You're going to get something back that looks like this. And what you care about is each one of these in between the periods is what we call an octet. So there's 4 octets in this. You care about the first 3 octets. 131.179.20. So you're going to do that on your work computer, same way that you have it set up every day. You're going to see what you get. You're going to write down that number. Then you're going to pull out your phone. That's probably going to be connected to the Wi-Fi in your office, right? That anybody can come in with their phone. You don't know how secure this phone is. And you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go to Google. You're going to type in what's my IP. And you're going to see if the first 3 octets match. If they do, not a good sign. Talk to your IT person. Doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, but it means that most likely that Wi-Fi network that all your employees come in and bring their cell phones and you give that password out is on the same network as your business network that you use that has all this customer data. The backup check. You're going to create 2 different files. You're going to save one to your desktop. You're going to save one if you do have a shared drive location or a server location. And then about a week later, you're going to delete both files. And then you're going to contact whoever does your backup, and you're going to say, hey, can you recover this file for me? It's titled this. I lost it. And see if they can find it. See if it backed it up. This is a spot check audit of is your backup actually working. If it's yourself and it's just your computer, still a good thing to do. Then you log into whatever that cloud backup service is that you have, and you see if you can find that file. Okay, so that is part of, I'm not able to go through the whole cyber hygiene spot check, but again, freshman level, the next level you would move up would be an annual vulnerability assessment. After you go through the inspecting what you expect, that's when you have to come up with a plan now, because it's great to inspect, but if you don't do anything about it, what does it matter? The freshman level of plan is what we call a plan of attack and milestones. And really what this is just a project plan with the old SMART goals that we evaluate people on: specific, measurable, achievable, results-oriented, and time-bound. So it's just a simple plan with deadlines. The JV level of this is a corrective action plan. And the big difference between a corrective action plan and a plan of attack and milestones is the corrective action plan attempts to get at the root causes. So it's one thing to fix that one computer that wasn't updated and just update it, right? It's another thing to go to the centralized location and turn on automatic updates for all the computers in the company. So that's why that's more the JV level. Again, something you'll probably need help with, but the freshman level you can definitely do. The varsity level is a full-on risk management program. That's what you're aspiring for, but you've got to take baby steps. Finally, supervise, and this is supervise the execution. Again, this goes back to this is not something to delegate. This is your problem as a business owner. The freshman level of this is just your regular probing, check-in meetings, and it just sets the expectation that information be pushed up around security, and then you pull it. The JV level is to actually evaluate on it. So if somebody's getting graded on this and their job is relying upon it, it sets a different precedent and priority. And finally, the varsity level is report on it. I don't care if this is just you. Report on it by putting the information on your website and say, hey, we do this to verify our security. It holds you accountable even as a self-employed person. But reporting on it is the varsity level. And finally, you're just going to repeat that wheel over and over again. Inspect, plan, and then supervise the execution. So the framework review, real quick. All day I play soccer. You must accept and decide, otherwise it's not even worth moving into the wheel. The freshmen, that do-it-yourself level, we gave you the spot check today. That's hopefully something you can walk out of here and go at least figure out, hey, are we at least trying at this? Are we being negligent? The JV level's your goal within the next year, the next 6 months, and then the varsity is kind of that long-term goal to aspire to. And this all, of course, you saw the wheel centered around continuing education. If we haven't learned anything today, it's that this is a constantly evolving and changing topic. So you're only as good as the latest conference you've been to, the latest information you found about this, because policy is constantly changing on this. And a great example of this is some states are starting to say that encrypted information, if taken off or accessed by an unauthorized person, is actually a data breach too. California just says it's unencrypted. So that whole encrypting your laptop thing and it's stolen that protects you right now in California, some states are starting to say, we don't care if it's encrypted. And that goes back to the computer thing that Bob talked about and how long it takes to break encryption. Accept, decide, inspect, plan, supervise. And to conclude, I would just say, a lot of information today. Hopefully this gives you some sort of an actionable, tangible steps to take towards doing this. But this is a new and evolving problem. So just be careful. Your IT people are well-meaning people. They come from the background they come from and the training that they come from. It's not their fault. Like I said, the only people that cared about this was really the military and the federal government for the longest time. It's not their fault that they don't look at things through the security lens or they don't have that security training. Same thing with the attorneys. There wasn't even a cybersecurity law class to be able to take when they were in school. So it's a big problem. I hope this has helped you out today, and that is us. And there's another Bob Mueller quote who's getting more and more famous by the day. So, thank you, guys. Any questions?
So this relates to encryption. There's a lot of solutions out there. According to minimum standard, if it has to do with HIPAA or compliance with some government agency, and you're a private company, there's different tools out there. So how do they, what sort of minimum standard or bar do they want you to go by?
So with the government stuff, it's typically the FIPS standard, FIPS 200. You can look it up, and that's standard. But from a technical standpoint, what I would say the most basic minimum that I would recommend, or that most kind of the bigger companies will require, is the AES 256 bit. And that's, that the way these encryption standards work is they get put out by like organizations like NIST and stuff and say, hey, we need to come up with a new encryption algorithm. A bunch of private companies will submit RSA as an example, and then they'll test them. They'll have all the super smart people test them and bang on them and see, and then one will get kind of become the de facto standard. And right now it's AES 256.
Is that within the MAC and
Yeah, it'll give you a couple options. The general guideline is, so encryption affects performance, right? So when you encrypt it, there's now more data that's going across. The higher you go, so that 256 number, there's also AES 128, you can go up to 512. The higher you go, the more secure it is, the harder it is to break, but it also is going to affect performance. So I think 256 is a good minimum to start. But yes, the Microsoft and File Vault fits that category. Yeah.
Like, what's my IP address and sites like that where people say you can check these, check security? I always get paranoid that I'm going to enter something that's going to trigger make me a target.
Yeah.
What? Is there a place to go to check it, or how do you guys know which one's good?
So there are, like in our solution, so we try and take a comprehensive approach because you need that. It's more than just that antivirus and firewall. So there's what's called URL filtering, which will block known to be malicious websites. It's also good for blocking if you want to block like social media for your employees. But that's the best solution out there, and it's called URL filtering. And so there's organizations out there that are centralized that will constantly be trying to figure out. The New York Times one's a great example. So our URL filtering solution, this was, I can't remember when this was, but it started blocking the New York Times, and like a client called and they're like, what the heck, I can't get to the New York Times. And we're like, oh, that's weird. And come to find out that it was the ad network of the New York Times that had a malicious link, right? And so the URL filtering solution automatically started blocking until that got removed, the New York Times. That's the best solution really that's out there right now.
And that's something you buy, URL.
You buy, yeah. And we try and, this stuff is hard, right? And it's more than just that antivirus and firewall, and so you really need that comprehensive solution, and there's managed security providers out there. We're only one of them, but that try and bundle all this stuff together, so it's just like, hey, make it easy for you. So.
I guess it depends on the size of the company, but how long does it take for your company to go in and do that first and second level of assessment? If you've got a company of 4 or 5 people, each with a laptop and a cell phone.
Yeah, it does depend on size, but the assessment, our assessment, again, everybody has different methodologies. Ours, what we do, it takes about a month in total, but we'll come in, we put a server on the network that's going to gather information. We like to leave that there for about 10 days to gather enough information to be representative. We do some different interviews and scans of the computers and stuff, and then we take it back, and it takes us about 2 weeks to kind of process information and turn it into that report card that's valuable for you.
But in terms of how much time you're spending with the employer or with the principal?
A day tops, yeah. We drop off the server, it takes a couple hours to set up, do some interviews, come back 2 weeks later and pick it up, and then a presentation at the end.
There's a lot of stuff. The cost for small business, how does it all fit together? Can you talk, I know it's hard to say exactly, but what does that look like? How do we even plan for a budget for something like this?
So we found out real quick that small businesses don't like having separate line items for cybersecurity and IT. So we've kind of bundled our solution. We have both. We have hey, it's secure IT. It's a tough problem to crack. I know Special Agent Sohn said it's tough from an expensive an expense standpoint for small businesses. But I mean, we're taking a shot at it. We think we've kind of cracked it. You be the judge. Take a look at the pricing. But I think that a lot of the technology that starts at maybe the military or the Fortune 500 level, as this stuff gets better, it does start to filter down to the small businesses. And you just need somebody that's paying attention and, again, kind of bundling this together to provide that comprehensive solution for you. An example of that would be there's technology that when you click on a link, so one of the biggest risks, you click on a link, it actually will open it in a sandbox, so not on your actual computer. It'll change the link and it'll open in a sandbox. For the longest time, that was a big business. You had to be big to really afford that solution. It started to trickle down. We included in our stuff to that small business level. So,
what type of bundled services do you include for Ariento?
It's tough to go through now, but it's on our website. We have a product called Cyber Lookout, which is our security product. We have our secure IT or secure workstation for the self-employed, and then we do the cyber diligence assessments is really what we do. Any other questions? Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. That concludes the conference today. We appreciate your time and half day. I know it's a big chunk of time, but hopefully it was well worth it. And you guys have some information to walk out with and think about and process. So, and then once again, if you do want to take the tour of the Athletics Hall of Fame, you can meet back there at the back of the office, and then remember to take one of the grab bags at the registration desk when you guys walk out.